Welcome back to the never-ending Daily Wire campaign coverage. This was supposed to be over on election night, and it seems like we are all here again. Happy Groundhog Day, everybody. We do have some updates, and the reason I feel it's very important to go live right now is there is a lot of disinformation going around the internet and a lot of fake news. So just the facts, here are the updates. Many mainstream, I guess you can't really call it mainstream anymore, many legacy and establishment media outlets have called the election for Joe Biden over Donald Trump. This began this morning at, I believe, 11:24 a.m. with none other than CNN, of course. NBC, ABC, MSNBC all soon followed that. And then about 2 or 3 minutes later, the Associated Press also followed that. Fox News followed as well. Fox News, you'll recall, was, I think, the only media outlet to call Arizona for Joe Biden on election night, even though then that decision was challenged. Anyway, these legacy media outlets have called the election for Joe Biden. That does not mean that the election is over, because the Constitution does not grant the legacy media the power to determine presidential elections. The election will be over in this case when a winner is certified, and a winner almost certainly will not be certified before this goes to the courts. And of course, the Trump campaign has not conceded. So we have a statement here from President Trump. This statement probably won't be read on legacy media, so I guess we'll just have to do it here. Statement from President Donald J. Trump. We all know why Joe Biden is rushing to falsely pose as the winner and why his media allies are trying so hard to help him. They don't want the truth to be exposed. The simple fact is this election is far from over. Joe Biden has not been certified as the winner of any states, let alone any of the highly contested states headed for mandatory recounts, or states where our campaign has valid and legitimate legal challenges that could determine the ultimate victor. In Pennsylvania, for example, our legal observers were not permitted meaningful access to watch the counting process. Legal votes decide who is president, not the news media. Beginning Monday, our campaign will start prosecuting our case in court to ensure election laws are fully upheld and the rightful winner is seated. The American people are entitled to an honest election. That means counting all legal ballots and not counting any illegal ballots. This is the only way to ensure the public has full confidence in our election. It remains shocking that the Biden campaign refuses to agree with this basic principle and wants ballots counted even if they are fraudulent, manufactured, or cast by ineligible or deceased voters. Only a party engaged in wrongdoing would unlawfully keep observers out of the courtroom, or out of the count room, rather. Everyone's going to the courtroom, and then fight in court to block their access. So what is Biden hiding? I will not rest until the American people have the honest vote count they deserve and that democracy demands. That is the statement from President Trump. There was another statement given immediately after the legacy media called the election for Biden. That was a press conference given by President Trump's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani. Rudy Giuliani was in Philadelphia, and he was flanked by a lot of campaign election poll watchers. For those who are unfamiliar with this, each campaign during elections is permitted to have poll watchers to make sure that shenanigans don't go on, because historically shenanigans do go on at polling places, in particular in Philadelphia. This is true of every election. Unfortunately, because of the unprecedented use of widespread unsolicited mail-in ballots, that process was much, much more difficult this year. And in certain locations, notably in Philadelphia, election officials in Democratic-run areas would not permit Republican poll watchers to look at the vote and verify that these votes were legitimate. So then the Trump campaign went to the courts to make sure that they would have their right to look at the count. The courts granted them that right. It is their legal right to watch the count. Even then, Rudy Giuliani and the other poll workers allege they were not given that right to watch the vote. So, as President Trump noted, there may well be mandatory recounts in certain places, but certainly the one thing we are guaranteed here is that this will be litigated. You know, just personally, I was asked in an interview about a month ago how I thought this election would play out, and this is exactly how I thought this election would play out, down to the Bush v. Gore type situation that we're in now, down to the number of states, 3 to 5 states it looks like are going to be hotly contested. There is a lot of disinformation going around, or misinformation at the very least, on both sides. So I think it's very important now to be calm and not be goaded into one side or the other necessarily. It is simply not the case that Joe Biden is the winner of the election. He may well be the winner of the election at some point, but right now that is not the case. Likewise, it is not the case that Donald Trump is the winner of the election. He may well be the winner of the election. We just don't know right now. We will not know who the winner of the presidential election is until the votes are certified. And the votes will not be certified until they have passed through a process of litigation. So once again, this is going to go to the courts. There is going to be a media narrative that comes out that Joe Biden is the winner of the election. Already you're seeing many more liberal and establishment Republicans conceding the election on President Trump's behalf. It does not matter if those establishment and liberal Republicans concede the election on President Trump's behalf. There is no legal weight to that whatsoever. Mitt Romney, perhaps expectedly, came out and congratulated Joe Biden and is giving the election, if he would be able to the Democrats. President Trump is not doing that, and therefore the election is not over. We will have to wait and see. A lot of people are positioning their coverage of the election today as the coverage of the winner. That's not the case. This is an update in an election process that will go on for a very long time. Almost certainly go on for a very long time. In the year 2000, some of us remember the year 2000, there was a dispute about the ballots in Florida with, frankly, less serious allegations than some of the disputes that are going on, notably in Pennsylvania, but in other places too right now. That election process lasted for 38 days in the year 2000. Al Gore challenged the vote in Florida. There were recounts. There were more recounts. It went to the Florida Supreme Court. Then it went up to the United States Supreme Court. There were a couple of decisions there. Ultimately, the recount was stopped. But that was a 38-day process. By my count, we are right now in day 4 of this process. Right? The election was Tuesday night. You have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and now we're on Saturday after this process. This is most likely going to go on for a long time. There are reports that President Trump was playing golf while the media were making this decision. And I think that tone actually is important to recognize for how the campaigns are looking at this situation. Joe Biden has accepted this, granting that he is the president from the media. Kamala Harris has already changed her handle on Instagram and said that she is the vice president-elect. But it's important to remember, on election night, Joe Biden said he was very excited that, he felt that he had a good chance of winning. President Trump said the same thing. And then he added, in my mind, we've already won. And the legacy media went crazy. They were so upset by this idea that Trump would preemptively declare himself the winner. The same is true here for either candidate who does it, because there are still hotly contested elections, razor-thin margins, and strong evidence of irregularities. Now, it's going to be incumbent on the Trump campaign to prove those irregularities, and even more difficult, to prove fraud in court. So we cannot conclude right now that there is guaranteed 100% we've got the hard evidence of fraud. We've got a lot of circumstantial evidence of big issues at the polling places. And probably most egregiously, the decision of the Philadelphia election officials not to permit the legally mandated Republican poll watchers even after a court order. That is very strong evidence that something stinks in the city of Philadelphia. And of course, those votes will go on for a long time. And then there are the questions about the process itself. We have Election Day for a reason in this country, because there are already always shenanigans. Why did the votes take so long? Why on election night in certain hotly contested precincts did vote counting just stop? In some places it stopped for days. Why did that happen? There's no explanation yet. Democrats will have to provide an explanation, and the Trump campaign will have to prosecute their case if they want this to be to drag on, and if they want to hold on to the presidency. As of now, there is nothing new on the political front. There's nothing new on the campaign front. The only thing that has changed is on the media front. The legacy media have called the election. I'm no constitutional scholar, but I don't see anywhere that the U.S. Constitution grants the legacy left-wing media the right to call presidential elections. It was funny when I woke up this morning, I think a lot of us did, and we saw the update. The big update was the Associated Press, more than CNN or NBC or MSNBC. And the Associated Press, the headline came in, the Associated Press calls the election, as though the Associated Press were politically neutral, as though the Associated Press were objective reporters. The Associated Press style book, you'll recall, now bars use of the term illegal alien. They say you're not allowed to use the term illegal alien. The Associated Press style book, after the BLM riots and Antifa riots this summer, said that you will have to capitalize the word black, but lowercase the word white, which seems kind of racist to me. I'm not so sure. And then the Associated Press calls the election early for Joe Biden. I think that tells you everything you need to know about the legacy media and about the way that this process is unfolding. If I could caution anything when looking at these results, I would encourage patience. Patience is a virtue. That is what the Trump campaign is pushing out. The media are rushing to call this thing to create a narrative that, if there were a significant challenge in court, could not overcome that narrative. I think that's what's happening on the political media front right now. But the media don't get to call the elections. This process will continue. We will continue to provide you coverage objectively. Obviously, we at the Daily Wire own our point of view. We are conservative here, but that does not mean that we are dishonest. Quite the opposite, actually. I think it is the legacy media which is quite dishonest, because they don't own their political biases. They don't own their point of view. And in this case, they are explicitly lying about this election. The election is not over. We will continue to cover this, whether it turns out that Joe Biden is named the president, whether it turns out that Joe Biden wins this election and the transition begins and then he's inaugurated in January. We'll cover that honestly. If it turns out that there is fraud, if that is the case that is proven in court and President Trump wins this election, we will cover that honestly as well. The only change to me, the only thing that is clear today, is that we need to replace the legacy media in this country, because the legacy media are acting as I suppose, a fourth branch of government. An unconstitutional, anti-constitutional fourth branch of government. And not just that, but they're acting in a way that is dishonest and irresponsible and corrupt. We will not do that. We will not do that. Whatever way this election turns out, we will not do that. That probably what will come up next, barring a concession from President Trump, which, given his statement, seems unlikely, will be coverage of the legal battle. So stay tuned for that. Obviously, we don't have a timetable. This is all happening in real time. In the meantime, enjoy your weekend, tune out the legacy media, and we will be with you more when there is something more to report.